Genshin's new endgame is a really good time in my opinion. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice and let's get into it. I'm gonna be honest with you, I feel like this is the endgame that I've wanted Genshin to have for quite a long time now. This exact type of game mode. I had always said to my friends, I really wish that they could add something like Deadly Assault from ZZZ into Genshin Impact because I feel like it would work really well in this game. And they did it. They just did it. And we did know about this for a while, we knew it was coming, but now that I've actually tried it out, it's honestly a lot of fun. I really like it. I never thought we would get something like this, since a few years back, Genshin had said that they were basically not going to add any more endgame after Spiral Abyss, but it seems like in recent years, they've walked back on that, and they actually are adding more endgame. And honestly, I'm glad they did, because I actually really enjoy this mode. My first initial impressions, like I said, it kind of reminds me of Deadly Assault from Zenless Zone Zero, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically like a boss killing mode where you pick a boss to fight, you pick a team, you can't repeat teammates because they're locked into that particular boss chamber, and then you have to try and beat that boss in time. Now, the difference is that in Genshin it's timer-based, and in Zenless it's score-based, but it still kind of feels structurally similar because instead of aiming for a specific score in order to get certain rewards, you can just pick the difficulty. So if you're unable to do a higher difficulty, you can just do one of the lower ones and get all the rewards. Whereas in ZZZ's DA, there is a max of 60k points, but you only need to get 20k if you want a 3-star stage, or you can just 2-star across 3 stages, and that gives you all of the pull-based rewards. It kind of feels closer to Deadly Assault than Memorial Arena for me, for those of you who know what that is, but they're kinda based around the same concept in general. I'd say the main difference is that in Zenless, you're fighting weeklies. In Honkai Impact, I don't know, I didn't play that game enough, but I just know you're fighting some kind of bosses. Whereas in Genshin, you're fighting the regular overworld bosses or abyss bosses that you would typically fight, but they're really juiced up here depending on the difficulty of the mode you choose. So let me just delve into why I like this so much. I've been playing this game for years. I've been playing this game since 2.1, and I have stuck with it ever since then. I have quite a highly invested account, and it actually feels like I'm being properly challenged by this game mode. They finally added a mode where we can limit test, a mode where long-term players that have put a lot into the game, in terms of time, investment, all that jazz, they actually have a place to use their best teams. And it doesn't punish newer players or people that don't really have good accounts. Because much like Zenless, the bar to getting all of the pulls, it's not that high. You only have to beat the bosses on hard mode, which isn't difficult to do. And yes, getting the feathers is more difficult, but you can easily get all of the primo gems very quickly. Also, I would like to add, this is not taking away from our Spiral Abyss or Imaginarium Theater resets. You also get a ton of Mora out of this, plus some XP books, so you get a couple other things out of it too. There's also this function where you're able to get some artifact farming done at the same time, but honestly it's nothing special, you're just getting artifacts, it's what you would expect. But I suppose it's convenient if you're doing your reset and you want to spend your resin. But that aside, it feels like there is a genuine reason to have really strong teams now. Constellations before could sometimes feel a bit redundant, but now they genuinely feel meaningful. Now the Spiral Abyss has been getting harder and harder in recent times, so it has been rising up in challenge, fair enough. And Constellations have always felt handy, but never has there been a game mode where it genuinely feels like limit testing is encouraged. I also really enjoy that there's a co-op aspect to it, because my first experience with this game mode was actually somebody joining my world and asking if I could help them clear. And we had to actually devise different strategies and try and come up with a team to take down Hydrotopa, because we had to work with each other's rosters. Now the hardest stage, you can only claim the feather if you do the hardest difficulty yourself, but every other stage is co-opable. This is personally the endgame that I've always wanted in Genshin, and I feel like if they released this first, and Imaginarium Theater afterwards, I feel like IT would have been received way better, because this is the particular game mode I feel like a lot of people wanted, a genuine, high HP, meaty boss arena where you can just test all of your best stuff. Genshin had mentioned before that the reason they didn't want to make more endgame was because of anxiety, but I feel like they've managed to do a good job at making sure that this wouldn't happen with this mode, because like I said, you can get all of the pulls pretty easily if you just play one of the lower modes. And if you manage to beat the hardest difficulty, you're able to get a special weapon skin. I think the main issue that I can see people having with this is the fact that the bosses do really encourage that you use particular characters the higher up you go in difficulties, but the reason why I'm mostly fine with that is because to get the Primogem rewards, you just don't really have to abide by that. I think that as long as it follows this ZZZ-like model of you can pretty much just play your teams regularly if all you want are the pulls, but if you want the little extra things, then you do have to play a little better with better teams. I think that's fine. The hardest difficulties of this game mode were made for people who have invested a lot. We already have Imaginarium Theater for people who just want to horizontally invest and don't really want to invest a lot into one character. There's already a game mode that caters to that. And then we of course have Spiral Abyss as the generalist mode that has remained as Genshin's primary endgame for years and years upon this point. I think that as long as the polls remain accessible, as in the Primogen rewards, I genuinely don't have an issue with this model. I think it works very, very well. It's just no different from Deadly Assault to me. I, as a long-term player of this game, genuinely feel like I have a proper endgame goal again. It now feels like there's actually something I can work towards in terms of making my account stronger. I now actually feel some level of incentive to keep improving my units instead of just kind of leaving them at a certain point because, oh, it's fine, they'll clear all endgame. Now there's actually something to aim for, something higher, and it's completely optional because you really don't get much out of doing that anyway. But you do still get something, those artifact feathers. Considering that you get these from the more hardcore stages, I think that checks out, because if you're up there anyway, it makes sense that you're probably the type of person that wants to optimize your artifacts. And the 5-star weapon skin is completely cosmetic. It does not provide you any sort of gameplay benefit whatsoever, it's just there to look cool if you like it. So with that being said, I feel like they really managed to strike the balance between accessibility and actually being a good challenge. I can honestly see the co-op aspect of this being a lot of fun, because like I said, you actually have to take the other person's team roster into consideration. For example, when I was in co-op and I was trying to use Skirk and Escoffier, the other person had to use their Hydros, so that Escoffier's passive wouldn't be broken. It's simple, but I personally found it enjoyable, and it's cool to have a Genshin endgame where you actually do have to try again a couple of times if you really want to be able to beat it. I think out of Imaginarium Theater, Spiral Abyss, and this brand new Stygian Onslaught mode, this is, in my opinion, easily the best Genshin endgame. It gives you quite a lot of rewards, they managed to strike a very good balance with it, and it's literally based on a game mode that I really, really like from another game, so naturally I was going to enjoy it. I'm a big Deadly Assault fan, so naturally Stygian Onslaught was gonna be my thing. I just hope that going forward, we can maintain this degree of balance, because it's just so good as it is. I am actually curious if everyone else is enjoying this just as much as I am. It might just be a case where I've been playing this game for a really long time, so I have a really chunky roster. Therefore, I feel like I have a lot to work with. But like I said earlier, I do think that this game mode was made for people who have been playing for a longer time, but they didn't leave out people who haven't been playing for a longer time either. I will say this is interesting, because historically, you've always wanted to build two really good teams in order to take on Endgame. I kind of consider Imaginarium Theater to be sort of a weird anomaly of sorts, and I say this because you don't really build specific teams for that endgame, you just kind of level up characters and use them, and you're able to borrow characters from other players anyway. And there is indeed a hard game mode in Imaginarium, but you can just borrow one of your friend's C6s and take care of it pretty easily. There have been hard theaters before, and I do think the game mode has grown on me over time. But you don't really prepare for theater, you just kind of use characters that you have built for Abyss in theater, or just characters that you have leveled up in general, because you have to fill out a bunch of character slots in order to even partake in some of the harder stages. Whereas with this wants you to have 3 good teams. Now granted, the higher you go up in the difficulty of this endgame, the more the bosses prefer that you take advantage of whatever their shill mechanic is. But even so, it serves as an excellent testing ground for whales that just kind of want really big test dummies, because after a certain point, Abyss just isn't really able to sustain whales because they do so much damage, and I know that this is really helping out a very small section of the player base because most people don't see 6 characters, but I am just trying to point out how it does genuinely feel like they managed to make a something for everyone type of game mode. Now, like I said, my perspective could be very skewed because I've just been playing this game for a long time, so I have a large roster. I'm not actually sure how this game mode has been received. I haven't actually talked to many of my friends about it yet. I've just sort of told them that I enjoyed it and that I think it's good. So with that being said, do actually tell me whether you enjoy this endgame or not, because I'm curious if my opinion is unpopular or not. I personally think it's excellent. Everyone gets something out of this, and I think that's awesome. And this is the hard endgame that I feel like people have been wanting for ages now. But if you like it, definitely tell me why. I'm curious, and I can completely understand not liking how shill-specific the bosses can be. That's a completely reasonable take, but I do feel like you can kind of brute force the mechanics at the lower difficulties, so it's not as much of a problem. But that's just kind of my thoughts on the matter. How do you feel about it? Definitely let me know down below. I have a silly second channel where I just kind of cover whatever I feel like in regards to gacha games. Head on over and check that out if you're interested. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why I personally adore Stygian Onslaught. This has been Juice, signing out. And I think it's finally time to level up my Moika's talents, bro.